Hello, and welcome to Managing Change in RSVP, RSVP 2.0. This webinar has a forum feature included, which we hope you'll find useful to note your questions and comments, which you may enter at any time during the presentation. Since this is not a live session, your questions will be collected and responded to by the Corporation for National and Community Services, CNCS, or the Corporation Senior Core Office via a frequently asked question posting. These facts will be available on the virtual conference website for up to 3 months, as well as on the National Service Resources website. The goals for this session are to 1. Revisit the history and changes to RSVP, including past and current impact programming, the Kennedy Serve America Act, and RSVP recompetition, the CNCS strategic plan, and implications for RSVP under the new national performance measures. 2. Engage in dialogue about aligning RSVP projects with CNCS national performance measures and sponsor mission. 3. Prepare volunteer stations and volunteers for opportunities to graduate if not able to fit into programming. Programming for Impact, or PFI, was adopted in 1996. All Senior Core projects identified the community need to be addressed, the service activity, anticipated inputs, anticipated accomplishments, and the anticipated impact of services provided. Performance measurement began in 2003 and built on the PFI approach. Projects specified anticipated impacts into intermediate and end outcomes and provided measurement details including the indicator, target, and instrument used to track outcomes. National performance measures are the next step to build on what we've learned since incorporating impact measuring in our culture of performance. How did we get to national performance measures? In a word, through reauthorization of the Corporation for National and Community Service, CNCS. The CNCS 2011 through 2015 strategic plan is a direct result and requirement of the 2009 Kennedy Serve America Act. The national performance measures were required and adopted as part of the strategic plan. Combining the rich history of impact reporting with the new national performance measures across CNCS programs is beneficial to everyone. All programs of CNCS are adopting the national performance measures. For RSVP, it means we have a vehicle to continue to build on what we've learned to demonstrate the unique impact of RSVP's rich 40-plus year history, and to add reliable data to the activities to support our funding in a comprehensive way. The National Performance Measures gives CNCS the opportunity to take management of Senior Core's resources to a new level, but it is also an opportunity for individual projects to strengthen their stories. National Performance Measures will make it easier to convey the project activities and impacts of volunteers. With the passing of the Kennedy Serve America Act, RSVP will be recompeted for the first time since its inception. This competitive process will invite incumbent sponsoring organizations and other interested eligible agencies to apply for the program resources. The requirements specify that the service area is maintained, the program distribution remains similar, and, as much as possible, disruption of volunteers is minimized. As part of the pre-competition process, RSVP project sponsors were provided the opportunity to assess 1. The community and stakeholder participation. 2. Staffing of the RSVP and implications of competition. 3. Administrative burden, tracking current stations and volunteers that are not impact-based. 4. Opportunities for new partnerships. This assessment phase offered sponsors and directors the opportunity to consider all factors in managing and supporting a healthy and vibrant RSVP project. In 2011, the corporation embarked on a new, ambitious strategic plan. The plan provides opportunities for all corporation programs and initiatives to contribute to the national service narrative by programming impactful volunteer activities that are in direct alignment with the 6 focus areas: disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, and veterans and military families. We need to be mindful that RSVP is a program with a rich 40-year history. This history includes local community relationships and partnerships in the form of volunteer stations. For many years, RSVP served as a clearinghouse for people 55 plus to serve at any eligible station. As long as the project developed the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, volunteers could be placed at any station and serve as many or few hours desired with little or no connection to the sponsoring agency. RSVP sponsors and stations enter into agreement through a MOU, which spells out the terms, conditions, and responsibilities of both the RSVP sponsor and the station. MOUs are required to be updated once every 3 years. As mentioned, depending on the project and volunteer assignment, some stations may not be in alignment with the goals of the overall RSVP project. In this time of fiscal austerity, the corporation continues to compel RSVP sponsors to make decisions about managing the resources, staffing, and administration of current projects. Increasing requirements for implementing national performance measures is a priority for all programs of the corporation. RSVP sponsors will need to closely examine their program goals, activities, and community needs to ensure their program aligns with the national performance measures and are equipped to manage the federal resources to achieve results. To help you think about how you might approach managing the change locally, we'll discuss the following. Items to consider when reviewing station Memorandum of Understanding agreements. Suggestions on how to graduate stations and volunteer activities no longer in alignment with the national performance measures or are inactive. And finally, we'll discuss seeking new partners for stations that are a fit with the goals of the sponsor and align with the national performance measures. An important step in embracing national performance measures is to conduct an assessment of current volunteer stations to determine if 1. The station aligns with the national performance measures with sound service activities for volunteers. 2. The station is an active partner in programming. Do they know the value of the RSVP project? Provide in-kind support. Recognize volunteers. 3. The station feels and can demonstrate with reliable data that RSVP is integral to the community and the volunteer. Like all federally funded programs, RSVP projects must be able to demonstrate outcomes that support the public's investment of resources. Data must be reliable. With national performance measures, the corporation now has a standardized mechanism with which to demonstrate management and outcomes of service in our national service narrative. If you haven't yet, we encourage RSVP sponsors to review the corporation's strategic plan and national performance measures. It is critical that agencies review the Notice of Funding Opportunity to ensure that the sponsor mission and proposed volunteer activities are in alignment with CNCS priorities. Once you've determined a mission fit, the RSVP sponsor commitment to program requirements, transparency, consistent messaging, and recognition are integral in this process. Some stations may no longer be a fit for the requirements and activities of RSVP. Which brings us now to graduating stations. Graduating stations does not necessarily mean the end of relationships or partnerships. It should be a thoughtful, intentional process, and all stations should be recognized for their invaluable partnerships, regardless of tenure. A few items to consider regarding graduating of stations. First, review the station memoranda of understanding dates and number of volunteers serving through the station. In some cases, stations will self-deselect. Volunteers will not be replaced and will graduate through attrition. Stations may not have current MOU dates and therefore can be determined inactive. As a reminder, volunteers should not be serving at stations without signed, active MOUs. If the station representative that signed the last MOU is no longer working at the agency, you can contact the agency director to inform them of the criteria to continue as partners with RSVP or graduate. Be prepared to provide a referral to another program or volunteer center for stations with volunteer recruitment needs. And most importantly, recognize the station for their partnership publicly. Take a moment to think about and write down one way you might creatively recognize a graduating station. Feel free to share your comment in the forum. RSVP volunteers are generally very dedicated to the stations they serve, and in some cases, they may struggle to identify as RSVP volunteers. They see themselves as part of the community. A Red Cross volunteer or a Meals on Wheels volunteer serving through RSVP. In most cases, these volunteers are committed to the stations they serve, and the impact of not being affiliated with RSVP would be minimal. When it comes to volunteer management, right-sizing is a term that refers to decreasing the actual number of unduplicated federal volunteers funded, which increases the cost per volunteer. Unduplicated number of volunteers is the actual number of volunteers enrolled and serving in RSVP. In some cases, RSVP grantees conduct right-sizing through volunteer attrition and simply do not recruit volunteers to replace those that leave the RSVP project. Moving forward, we recommend that RSVP projects recruit only for the stations with work plans that are aligned with the national performance measures in order to 1. Publicly share the critical service activities addressed by the RSVP project. 2. Attract volunteers looking to engage in activities with associated outcomes. Other RSVP grantees right-size through attrition of work plans or station assignments. Once a station notifies the sponsor that it will close, existing volunteers should be notified and offered the opportunity to transfer to another station, or they may graduate from the RSVP project. One of the benefits of right-sizing is the ability to ensure that volunteers understand their connection to the station, the project, RSVP, Senior Corps, and National Service. Moving forward with national performance measures, all new volunteers recruited should be aware that their service will help demonstrate results. All volunteers should be recognized annually for their service regardless of time served. This can be done on the station and project-wide level and should be consistently applied and budgeted in the RSVP grant application. Next, we'll show you one example of how this could look. In this example, the RSVP project decided to review the volunteer and station enrollment as part of the renewal application cycle. When first funded in 1971, they were funded for just over 300 volunteers. In the subsequent years, the project has grown to over 600 volunteers, however, has only received minimal increases to the original funding level and is currently receiving $43,000 from CNCS. 600 is well over the original funding level requirement. In addition, the project staff spends copious amounts of time managing timesheets, MOUs, and reports from stations that have also grown to accommodate massive volunteer numbers. The sponsor finds that the current federal funding barely covers $72 of volunteer cost and has asked the RSVP staff to fundraise to supplement the project. As part of the National Performance Measure preparation, the director pulled a report from the electronic data system and indicates 420 volunteers of those 600 served 3 or more hours a week last grant year, totaling $102 per volunteer. This is great news for the project director, as the sponsor is highly motivated to implement the national performance measures. Realizing the administrative burden associated with managing over 180 more volunteers than originally funded, the director consults with the sponsor to discuss moving forward. All agree that the next step in the review process includes identifying stations that are in alignment with the sponsor mission and the corporation's national performance measures. In the months that followed, a thorough review of stations, partners, and volunteers was conducted with consistent messaging regarding changes to Blue Mountain RSVP. The staff of RSVP, the sponsor, and the RSVP Advisory Council was provided training and assisted the director in dialogues with stations and volunteers. They created a widespread public relations messaging thanking the volunteers and stations past and present for making a difference in the community. Then, they invited them to become engaged in the effort to help Blue Mountain RSVP contribute to the national service narrative and spelled out how RSVP would focus efforts in the healthy futures and education focus areas. For stations and volunteers that no longer fit into the mission of the Blue Mountain RSVP, resources were provided on volunteer management training and links to other volunteer opportunities. Here, we have the results of the Blue Mountain RSVP example. 420 unduplicated volunteers confirmed as active. Over 180 volunteers retired from RSVP. Stations graduated or aligned with National Performance Measure goals. Improved project visibility in community. Increased project results. The efforts of the Blue Mountain RSVP project sponsor example are real. Admittedly, not every conversation with stations was easy. Remember that this RSVP has been in the community since 1971. What did work well in managing the stress and discomfort associated with the change was the supportive, consistent messaging from the sponsor, project, staff, and the Community Advisory Council that reiterated that with federal funding comes the need to demonstrate results. In this time of fiscal austerity, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that every dollar allocated to RSVP is able to demonstrate reliable outcomes for making an impact across our communities. The efforts of the Blue Mountain RSVP project sponsor example are real. Admittedly, not every conversation with stations was easy. Remember that this RSVP has been in the community since 1971. What did work well in managing the stress and discomfort associated with the change was the supportive, consistent messaging from the sponsor, project staff, and the Community Advisory Council that reiterated that with federal funding comes the need to demonstrate results. As we move into 2013 RSVP recompetition, the corporation is diligently working on a fully transparent grant application review process, which ensures that the highest quality applicants receive the precious RSVP resources. As the highest quality applicants become grantees, they will be asked to ensure that the results produced by the RSVP projects have reliable data, that management of the resources is rigorous and on a path to continued improvement, and that all of the above are in line with the CNCS strategic plan and approved national performance measures. Finally, everyone involved is accountable for striving for success. The responsibilities associated with being good stewards of the public purse are many. The future of national service relies heavily not just on the corporation, Rather, the combined efforts of all of us to demonstrate high-integrity management, performance, and to tell our story with reliable data that addresses our nation's most pressing needs. We hope that you will find the remaining RSVP focus sessions helpful in both content and practical application scenarios, and encourage you to bookmark the RSVP program-specific online learning lesson available through the Resource Center. Our commitment to you. FY 2013 RSVP Recompetition fully transparent, awarding the limited funds to the highest quality applicants. Fiscal year 2013 RSVP Recompetition fully transparent, awarding the limited funds to the highest quality applicants. Your commitment to us. Data-driven documentation of results. Rigorous management of resources. Alignment with strategic plan and national performance measures. Our mutual commitment. Make the next 40 years of RSVP as inspiring and successful as the last 40. Thank you for your time and commitment to RSVP.